We can get started here. I'll speaker Daudt and myself just kind of take a little 1 or 2 minute spiel about what's going on and what our plans are for the future. First of all, thank you all for coming. Thank Speaker Daudt for coming down and helping us out. Surprised me today. I'm putting stuff in the cooler and says, "What are you doing?" Turn around and see here. So thanks for coming. Coming down and helping and being here to support us. Murray, come in, Murray.
All the way from Ellendale.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I've been on my lawnmower for 2.5 hours.
Is this your lawnmower?
I think so. Oh, I can do it.
So thanks for coming. Thank God for the weather. Yesterday this was miserable. Great job on the outing today. We just appreciate everybody coming and supporting us and supporting the John's campaign during the business here. He's going to be our next senator in this district in 2024. Teaming up a little bit here and there. Absolutely going on. Getting to know him better. Things are really going well for our campaign. Jamie Cooper's here. She's talking with the media like crazy. Getting radio ads going. We've got newspaper ads and what are they called? Impressions?
Yes.
For the electronic newspaper.
Yes, on the online version of the newspaper. Yeah.
We're working on that. Our man, Erickson is here. He's been helping with the ads and all the meetings together. So, and my door knocking through, Jeremiah, Winston back there, and we have about a week, we'll have about 4 to 5 people will be coming out with us regularly knocking on doors. So we'll have about 4, 5, 6 people every time we go out. So that's going to be nice. I guess to tell you, this last week has been really, really good. I'm kind of a guy that likes to have God to my point of the head type of person, to make sure I'm in the right direction. And 2 weeks ago, you asked me how things were going. I said, "Oh, they're okay, but you know, it's just okay." And we were kind of afraid about it. We want to make sure that my wife Liz and I are doing what God wants us to do in the right path or the right direction or the right message. And I tell you, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, with a 2x4 that hit in the closet. We had door knocking where people writing checks on his front. We had another lady that was just putting a sign in her yard that I happened 3 years ago. And I have to tell you stories that are pretty amazing. Knocking on her door, never met her before. Asked her if I could put the sign back out in the front yard. And she said, "Oh, yes, we have to get you back in. I'm going to support you. And I'm going to get you a check. Well, I can't do it until next week, but I'm going to get you a check next week." I said, "That's fine. Whatever works out, we're good financially, but if you want to do that, that's great." And so I go start looking at the little sign. And not more than 2 minutes later, she comes out. She's got a check written for $75. She hands it to me and says, "Right, I forgot. My kids gave you some birthday money, so here's a $75 check." So we have a floor during the week. It's like, that's that combination. We're doing the right thing. We're getting the right people. We're not going to stay a while. And just a little great report on that. And we've just been having a good time. We've hit the street. We've probably hit $5,000 maybe so far.
5,000.
5,000? Yeah, so we're hitting ahead of the game from 2 years ago. And it's just going well. The fundraising's going really well. We've got probably close to 17,000 cash on hand. My goal is to get at least 25,000 cash on hand so we can do radio ads and newspaper a little bit, impressions, and mail it with some mailers out. So we're like 5,000 or less away from our goal. So yeah, it's been really good.
We'll spend the money wisely.
We will.
Yes.
We have them too. We have them too.
Have you been door knocking all over the district?
We've just been Faribault. We just got more information for the Medford and for Starland Wells Township. So we've got to Medford probably, I'm thinking next week or next week. And the plan is to get to Medford, Morristown, Allendale, Claremont, Hope, and Nearstrand in the next 3 to 4 weeks to get all of them. And I got help at Medford right now, that's kind of trying to start there. I've got a couple people that are volunteering to help. So it's kind of coming together. I have to give you another quick story. Mowing my lawn, just getting done with the tractor, and I got a guy walking his dog down the street, and he all of a sudden comes over the curb, he's walking in my yard, and I go like, I don't know what this is about. This is kind of strange. I've never had anybody do that. So he got pretty cold and shut off the tractor. He said, yeah, my name's Bill. I just live across the street, across the prairie here. He said, I like what you're doing. I want to get involved in any way I can. I just retired. And whatever you want me to do, I'm there for you. So I said, well, fundraising be okay? Yep, fundraising good. The door knocking? Yep, I'll do that. And media, letters to the editor? Yep, I'll do that. And it's like, this is a person I've never met, and coming on my lawn to talk to me about getting to be a volunteer. It's been like that, like at least once or twice a week. So it's been really, really exciting. You're okay. And with that, I will turn it over to the speaker.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you all for coming out. It's fun for me to come down and see Brian and see how much excitement he's got in the district. We really appreciate you supporting him and sending him to St. Paul. He's been a real asset for us in St. Paul, and he's done a great job representing your community. And it's awfully fun for us to have a brother-sister team in the legislature, so they are the only brother-sister team in the legislature.
We're in history books.
Yeah. So it's fun, and I'm sure it's fun for them that they get to serve together. But Marion was incredibly helpful 2 years ago in helping Brian get elected, and we want to make sure we keep him there. So we took the majority 2 years ago by winning 11 seats. 10 of the 11 seats were out in Greater Minnesota, much like this one, and frankly, I think Minnesotans kind of felt like Democrats had left Greater Minnesota behind. Greater Minnesota didn't have the same kind of economic recovery after the recession that the Twin Cities has had, and frankly, Democrats want to spend all their attention, all their time, and all their effort in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and they've kind of forgotten about the rest of the state. So they gave us an incredible opportunity to come out here and talk about issues that we know are important to people, and then go to St. Paul and take action to make a difference. And Brian has done exactly that. So we are thrilled to have him there. We've been negotiating a little bit on a special session. We've had an incredibly successful 2 years. The last 24 hours of the last session wasn't great, but the one good thing that happens by having that end deadline at the end of session is it forces people to come together and forces people to compromise. And we got the Democrats to agree to some tax relief and some bonding in some very important areas. One of those in the bonding bill was Highway 14. We've got $85 million in that bonding bill for Highway 14. We know how, I have to confess, right at the end of session I was saying, they've been talking about Highway 14 for 25 years. And so somebody corrected me, it's been 40 years they've been talking about Highway 14. So, but I want to tell you a little story of what we're dealing with up there. So in the negotiations, typically the way that this works is I'll meet with the governor and Senator Bach, and we kind of come to a tentative agreement, and then at some point we bring in the minority leader from the Senate and the minority leader from the House. And that's Paul Thiessen, the former speaker. He sent a letter early on saying that he would only support, that he and his members didn't like the earmarks in the bonding bill. Well, that's what a bonding bill is, frankly. Earmarks is a word that sounds horrible, right? It's a Washington word. Let me tell you what that means. That he and his caucus were only going to support a bonding bill if we remove the funding for Highway 14. That's what it means. If we just put transportation dollars into the formula in the state, the perception, and I believe the reality in Minnesota is, and the perception in Greater Minnesota, is that when you put more money into the formula, it all gets sucked up by the metro area. And that's how projects like, I don't know what direction it's pointing. Is it that way? I'm feeling like it's that way. Is it that, was I right? I have a fairly good sense of direction. But that's how projects like Highway 14 get forgotten for 40 years. Because I've heard people joke about the number of orange cones in the metro area right now. There's no shortage of road construction going on in the metro area. But for some reason, the dollars haven't filtered out to take care of important regional projects like Highway 14. And it's not just Highway 14, it's Highway 23 between St. Cloud and Wilmer. It's frankly Highway 12 that goes right out of the West Metro. the most dangerous stretch of highway in the state of Minnesota. The most dangerous stretch of highway in the state of Minnesota. 5 people killed in the last 9 months on that stretch of road. And those are the kinds of earmarks that they want removed. These aren't earmarks, they're priorities. We literally want to tell MnDOT, fund these projects. These are important. We've been talking about them too long. And frankly, we can't forget about how important roads like Highway 14 are to communities in southern Minnesota and getting goods to market and moving people and moving commerce. So they're incredibly important. So I met with the governor yesterday. There's still one outstanding. We've agreed on a bonding bill. We've agreed on the tax relief. There's one outstanding issue. It's Southwest Light Rail. They will not allow funding for these roads and bridges unless we'll agree to do Southwest Light Rail. Never mind that it's not a good idea, and the Democrats in Minneapolis hate it and email me every day saying, please don't give it to the governor, please don't fund this project. It's a bad project. I want to tell you why we think it's a bad project. The North Star, we got numbers on North Star during this last session. For every person that rides North Star, there's a subsidy. So they pay for a ticket. They pay $8 or $12 for their ticket, depending on where they get on. You and I pay $22 per ride for every ride on North Star. $22 per ride. That's the subsidy. Doesn't matter if you get on in Big Lake and ride to Minneapolis, or if you get on in Fridley and ride to Minneapolis. That's the average. Okay? $22. It's commuter rail, right? So you're riding to work and back again. $22 more. $44 per day per person. We could Uber them cheaper. I mean, take that $44 times 5 days a week times 4 weeks a month. It's over $900 a month. We could lease a brand new Mercedes for every person that rides that train, pay for all of their gas, and still have money left over. Here's the kicker. The capital upfront cost for North Star was $400 million. Do you know what it is for Southwest Light Rail? 16 miles or 14 miles of rail. $1.7 billion, and that's without any cost overruns. The subsidy will actually be higher per ride on Southwest Light Rail than it will be on North Star. What we want to do is use our dollars effectively and efficiently, and we are not going to fund Southwest Light Rail. It's a bad idea.
You said there were no public hearings on it.
Yes, and that's another good point. Thank you, Kathy. I mean, there have not been public hearings on Southwest Light Rail in the legislature. Most people are shocked to hear that. How did we get this far? Somebody said to me this last week that CTIB, the County Transit Improvement Board, has already spent somewhere about $100 million on advancing engineering and planning and hiring staff to go out and lobby for this thing. $100 million. In statute, it says that the state must put up 10% of the money. The reason that is there, so they can't go around the legislature, so that they have to have legislative approval. Not my fault that somebody decided they were going to spend $100 million before they knew they could actually build the project. And we need to get away from that. We need to stop doing business like that in the state and start investing our money in the places that it actually makes sense. So that's what we're trying to do. And Brian has been a real asset in St. Paul, helping us do that. I'm going to meet with the governor again next week on Thursday. I'm not sure if we're going to have a special session. This bonding bill is a fairly large bonding bill. I know the governor loves to say that I'm not very reasonable, but I think Minnesotans know better. This actually would be the biggest bonding bill ever passed in the state of Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
Biggest one ever. That's how reasonable we're being, okay? The reason we support a bonding bill like that, and we normally wouldn't support one that big, is because instead of 10% road and bridge money in the bill, it's 50% in this bill. It has some trunk highway bonding that rides in addition to the general obligation bonding. So there's about $700 million of road and bridge money in this bill. And it would fund $85 million just for Highway 14. That's the kind of stuff that we want to fund. But in addition to that, the tax bill, $550 million of ongoing permanent tax relief for farmers, for seniors, for small businesses. I mean, to think of what this would do for Main Street businesses. There's a statewide business property tax. There's only two types of properties in the state that collect a state property tax. Other than that, your property taxes are for funding local government. counties, cities, townships, school districts. The state only collects on two properties, commercial properties and seasonal recreational, or cabins. Okay? What do those two properties have in common? Not a single voter at any one of those properties, right? So sometime in the past, when the state decided we needed more revenue, they made a political decision that, well, let's raise property taxes on these segments of property where there's no voters to react against us in the next election. Okay, great politics, horrible policy. So what we did in our bill, and we would love to exempt all of those properties from that state property tax, because we don't think any property should pay a property tax to the state. We'd like to get rid of them all. But as a start, what we did is we exempted the first $100,000 of value for every commercial property in the state from that statewide business property tax. What that means is that 3M is going to get $100,000 of their value exempted for the statewide business property tax. They might have property worth $300 million, I don't know. And, you know,
It's more cleaner.
pick your local business here that might have a property that's worth $100,000. They're going to get 100% of the value of the property exempted from this. So it's really going to help small Main Street mom and pop businesses, and that was the idea, because those mom and pop businesses haven't felt the full recovery since the recession. So that was our idea, was to help them. Those are the kinds of really common sense Main Street things that we're trying to do. So. But it looks like right now all of that's going to be held up for Southwest Line. And what I really fear, and I said this to the press yesterday after my meeting with the governor, what I really fear is that they're going to figure out a way to go around the legislature and build Southwest Light Rail anyway. And in the meantime, the Democrats are going to put a halt to all that road and bridge money, all that tax relief, all of those things, because they couldn't have Southwest Light Rail. So if this whole negotiations falls apart, keep a very close eye to what Met Council and CTIP do, because I bet you 3 or 4 months from now they find some creative way to fund this rail project that they want. And they better not do it, or we're going to raise holy hell on them, I think. So anyway, thank you so much for coming out. I can't tell you how important it is. This race right here will be ground zero for the Democrats' attempts to get the House back. Okay? When we won the House 2 years ago, we put an end to 2 years of single-party control. Right now, all we have is the House in the state of Minnesota, and this was a seat that helped us win the House. They want it back. Governor Dayton, for the last 2 years of his term in office, wants to have complete control. And believe me, it will make that last 2 years look like kindergarten if they get it back. They actually were holding back. They want it to look reasonable, and they will not make that mistake again. The folks that run the Democratic Party in the state of Minnesota are very progressive. They have no appreciation or understanding what goes on outside the 494, 694 loop whatsoever. No idea. A good example, the Sandpiper Pipeline. It was a pipeline to run from the oil fields in North Dakota to Superior, Wisconsin. It was going to cross North Dakota and Minnesota. Fully approved, shovel-ready a year ago in North Dakota. Enbridge that is building that pipeline. And just so you know what it means to our economy, thousands of jobs constructing the pipeline and millions of dollars of local property tax revenue to cities and counties along the route. Not to mention the pipeline is the safest way to transport crude oil. Enbridge announced last week they're now looking at a new route that will go from North Dakota through South Dakota, into Iowa, right along our southern border into Illinois, and to, I don't know where it's going to go to in Illinois, but literally they're going to go right around the state of Minnesota. So we're going to miss all of that, all of the jobs, all that economic benefit, all the tax revenue. Why? Because Democrats in Minneapolis and St. Paul don't like the oil coming out of the ground. They don't like fossil fuels. And my message to them has been, you're not going to stop it. And what we need to do is get the oil off the rails into the safest place, which is into a pipeline. By the way, I have the largest pipeline in the state that runs right through the middle of my district. And I'll bet you that 95% of the people in my district have no idea it's there. Not a clue. And it's the pipeline that brings oil from Canada to the Coke refinery. And I think it's a triple pipeline. Runs right through the middle of my district. It's the safest way to transport oil. I'm not trying to help oil companies. What I'm trying to do is help our economy. A lot of jobs, a lot of, Also, the governor's holding up the mining project up on the range. So, the Polymet project. They believe that Greater Minnesota should be preserved for folks that ride the trains in the metro area to be able to come out here and ride bicycles and take pictures. And you know what? That doesn't create the jobs to sustain our lifestyles and our lives and our children out here in Greater Minnesota. So we're going to keep just talking about things that make an awful lot of common sense in St. Paul. So anyway, I didn't mean to go on so long, but really, very sincerely, thank you for helping Brian. And this is going to be ground zero for them to try to get their majority back. So we really appreciate it, and Brian needs all the help that he can get. And we've got a really good opportunity to win the Senate seat here as well. So John's doing a great job, and appreciate you coming out as well. So thank you so much for letting me spend a little time with you.
And this person here, helped me 2 years ago, and I just found out recently, should be coming down comparable 3, 4, 5 days a week in the near future to help again. So this is the gal that's got the more brains than I'll ever imagine. Strategy, I mean, she has that combination that's hard to find. She will push me, and all of a sudden she'll look at me like, Ryan, we gotta take a break. We gotta sit down. This is, you're at the end of your rope. She knows me better than I know.
I'm everybody's mother.
And so I'm excited about that. We grew our campaign volunteers from probably 6 or 7 or 8. I think I'm at 36 or 37. And she's actually bringing her staff with us. So we are going to have people knock on the door. We're going to have people that in the streets and help us out. Donations aren't always welcome, but you know what? Prayer, I mean, is the biggest thing. I mean, I was 2 years ago. I had that thank you letter on every one. The last paragraph was, this race will be like David versus Goliath. And David wins. God gets all the glory. And it happened. I mean, we worked our butts off. She worked my butt off. But, we have BJ here is one of the team members for our prayer group. And we've got 2 other prayer groups in town here. And so we appreciate that. Very much appreciate that. All the work you put into that, too.
I just want to thank everybody too, and when we started to attack this the first time, everyone said to me, oh, you can't win down there, it's Patty Fritz, she's been here 10 years, we can't win, you can't win, and I said, we're going to win. And we just were quiet and just door knocked and built momentum, and then they started doing polling, and they're like, hey, you know what, there's actually some movement here, so we won by 300, you won by 3.
There's 222. That's what the sign said at the full testimony yard.
I think it was more than that.
I
I thought it was like 336. Well, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like less than 1%. So, yeah, no, my concern is that they are going to come full bear after you, and we're going to need help again. But I'll be here from half of August, September, and October. So I'm from Wright County, which is about as red as you can get in the state of Minnesota. And at one point, Wright County was the 3rd most conservative county in the nation. So that's where I'm from. I can afford to be down here.
Mine looks like hers.
Yeah, we have
We're
great.
neighbors up
We
there.
have a great district. I have a person running against me that was endorsed by Planned Parenthood. And as red as we are, that's not appealing in Wright County. And he's, probably puts that everywhere. So I can afford to be down here and support you and spend a lot of time here. So that's what I plan to do. And hit the streets and get down to Ellendale. Where'd she go? There, oh yeah, down to Ellendale. And there she goes.
Down there.
Yeah, near Strand and all the places that we hit before.
Brian,
Yes.
I'm just going to pass an envelope around because it's very expensive to do the yard signs and all of the literature. So this is for you. Keep going.
Here we go.
Kirk, I have a question for you. Just to clarify, if the governor won't bend on that light rail, does that mean all the things you laid out we're not going to get?
Basically, he after setting, on the last night of session, we passed the tax bill at the House and the Senate, we sent it to the governor's desk. We then passed the bonding bill out of the House, and we had agreement on what was going to be in it. We sent it to the Senate. The Senate added an amendment for Southwest Light Rail with like 6 minutes to go and tried to send it back to us. There wasn't time. We had already adjourned. And then they realized their mistake, tried to take up the bill, remove the amendment, and repass it without the amendment, because it has to pass exactly the same to go to the governor's desk. They ran out of time, and the bill died and didn't make it to the governor's desk. After session, the governor said, I will not hold the tax bill hostage, or I will not veto that and wrap it up in negotiations on the other stuff. The tax bill and the supplemental spending bill were supposed to kind of stand on their own as a package. He signed the supplemental spending bill. He allowed the tax bill to veto through a pocket veto just by not signing it. After 14 days, it just automatically vetoes. So he broke his word and did exactly what he said he wasn't going to do. If for some reason we can't pass and we can't come to agreement on this stuff, I think people need to hold him to his word and say, you said you weren't going to hold that tax bill hostage. You have agreement on that bill. Call a special session at least just for that. I have a hard time believing that they are going to walk away from $1 billion bonding bill with $700 million in road and bridge money and $550 million tax bill because they can't get their train. And you know, the train just simply on its own merits doesn't even make sense. There's a lot of Democrats in the legislature that do not support it. And frankly, that's not the way St. Paul should work. If we can't agree on that, let's at least pass what we can agree on. People get frustrated with the way Washington works and the way St. Paul works because of this exact thing. If the governor says, well, if I can't get the one thing I want, we're not going to pass any of this other stuff that we all agree on. Oh, okay. What does that sound like? A couple of kids on the playground throwing their suckers in the dirt. That's what that sounds like. Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So I have a tough time in my heart believing that they would do that, but they told me yesterday, without Southwest Light Rail, no special session. And I told them with Southwest Light Rail, no special session. So, and we just don't have the votes in the House. It's not me being a tough guy or, you know, we just don't have the votes. Members do not support it.
I just want to follow up on yours a little bit. I don't know if everybody has heard, but this guy did such a good job of orchestrating and planning and being about 3 steps ahead of the DFL for 2 years. We did a lot of good things. My session rep has a few of them. We added $138 million to nursing care facilities. We added $525 million to K-12 new monies. We did some other things that were just fantastic. And before the supplemental bill, which has the veterans' income tax removed, so retired veterans are no longer income tax, there's no income tax on the benefits. Before that supplemental bill was passed, we were tied for the lowest spending increase in 50 years. After we passed the supplemental bill, we're still tied third.
We're the second lowest spending increase in over 50 years.
Yeah.
And by the way, that 525, I think it was 525 increase in K-12 education, that was on top of what was already built in. That was our initiatives, and we directed where that was going to be spent. It was the largest increase in K-12 education in more than 10 years. The Democrats are mad. We don't have any problems investing money where it should be spent, and you can still do that and control the spending. The nursing homes, that was a 30-year reform. And frankly, we're for the first time in 30 years finally reimbursing nursing homes for the actual cost of care. Which means folks that work at nursing homes are going to get pay raises. And it means that your loved ones are going to have people that are there longer. They're not going to have the high turnover. And that means your loved ones are going to get better care. And that's what it's about. Making sure that we're taking care of those folks and doing the right thing. Not wasting money. There's a lot of waste in St. Paul. And we have a heck of a time trying to convince the governor to cut that stuff out.
I have a really good example. So in my district, Wright County is sort of the orphan child. Because, you know, it's been Republican so long and the Democrats have controlled House and Senate for so long in the governor's office. So one of my nursing homes got a 47% increase in their base rate. 47%. That's how bad off they were. One of them got a 27% increase, and that director told me that every single day, she was $62 per resident per day in the red. $62 per resident per day in the red. How do you keep a nursing home open that way? She only got a 27% increase. I don't even know where the other one was at. I need to go back and visit that one that got a 47% increase in Monticello. But how can you possibly keep them open? They were on the verge of, not being able to stay open. So Greater Minnesota really got hit hard with nursing home care because all that money was, it was a weird scale that I couldn't even explain because the formula is so complicated. But
the problem is, again, you're back to the metro versus rural.
Exactly.
The metro nursing homes were on a different pay scale and they were getting reimbursed at a much higher rate. Well, the problem was the rural nursing homes were the ones that were closing. And when a nursing home near you that has your loved one closes, what do? You got to move them an hour away. And then their quality of life goes down because they don't see you as much as they did before. So it's just being respectful of people and doing what's right.
I think it's very interesting because Patty Fritz always bragged about her care for the nursing homes because she worked at St. Lucas.
Yeah.
And she always bragged about how much money she brought to them. And now what you're telling me, the Republicans do.
Ann and I did a debate 2 years ago, and it was at St. Luke's nursing care. And I didn't know, back then, I knew nothing. I know a little bit now, but back then I knew nothing. We were debating about helping out the nursing care facility. We knew they needed more money. And during this debate back and forth, I just told her flat out, I says, well, we would have spent, at that time it was $80 million on the new Senate building. It's up to $140 finally. So, yeah, so I said, if it was a priority, she said it's a priority. I told her, if it's a priority to get funding to the nursing care facilities, you'd figure out a way to do it. And I said, you paid for it, you did that Senate building, and I don't know what money you used for that time. And she didn't have a comeback for it. It's like, but she talks it, but it never follows.
Yeah.
So, our leaders have been good.
And that veterans thing is really important. We were one of 5 states that charged a state income tax on veteran retiree benefits. One of 5 states. And frankly, veterans that serve in the military for their career are used to moving around. And they're not instructed, but they're informed at the end of their service which states have a favorable tax climate for retirement. So for a veteran to retire in Minnesota, it was costing them approximately 10% more than retiring in a non-tax state. So this year were successful. It was probably our biggest accomplishment. This year, we got those for career military retirees totally exempted from state income tax. It's a big deal. So anyway, I got to sneak out. So thank you all again very much for coming.